What's going on, guys? This is Ivan Simental, your mortgage advisor, and today we are going to answer a question that I get often. Do you need 2 years of employment history to buy a house? So let's dive in. The 2-year employment history is required to buy a house. But with that being said, there are a few caveats around that. When a lender is looking at your entire loan profile, they want to make sure that you are able to repay the loan. So there are 3 main things that they look at: your credit, your income, which is your employment, and your assets, what you have for down payment, and so forth. Now, if you have 2 of the 3 that are very, very strong, for example, you have great credit, and you have money to put down, a lot of money, also money in reserves, but you don't have 2 years employment history, they can make an exception. Why? Because they see you as a responsible borrower or as a responsible and non-risky borrower. So they might not necessarily need 2 years of employment history. They might require you just to have 1 year of employment history or a year and a half of employment history. I've seen all types of exceptions. I've seen all types of loans getting approved with all different types of circumstances. It, of course, depends if it is an approvable loan. Now, for example, here are some areas where you do not necessarily need 2 years work history. For example, a doctor who's been in medical school for 6 to 8 years is now a doctor after all of his schooling. We don't necessarily need him to be on the job for 2 years because he has all of that schooling to back him up. So that's one exception where we use the schooling as a form of employment. And I'm using air quotes because it technically is employment. Another scenario like that would be an attorney who's been in a law school for, I think it's 6-ish years, 6-7 years, who has now graduated and is now an esquire. He can use his schooling as employment history. So as soon as he gets on the job, he now has the technical 2 years of employment. Now, keep this in mind. If you are one of these individuals that doesn't necessarily have the 2-year work history, but has other compensating factors, there are plenty of lenders that can and will work with you. It is up to you to do your homework and your research and see and find those lenders that are willing to lend you money based off of your specific situation. Just because one lender tells you no doesn't mean that another lender is going to tell you no as well. It all depends on the bank and their guidelines and how flexible they are with their guidelines. Here's another example. If you've had multiple jobs within the last 2 years, but you've been employed for 2 years in the same field or somewhat related same field, we still count that as 2 years consistent income. It doesn't necessarily have to be 2 years at the same job. It just has to have 2 years of consistent employment within the same or similar field for a period of 2 years or more. Here's another question that I get. You don't necessarily have 2 years work history, but you do have a total of 2 years work history with unemployment included in that. So here's a perfect example. Say within your 2 years, you worked for 6 months, unemployed for 2 months, worked again for 6 months, unemployed for another 2 months, and so forth. And you did that for a consistent basis of 2 years. We are then able to use that unemployment income, especially right now, we are able to use that unemployment income as income because you have been consistently getting unemployment or have been receiving unemployment funds for 2 years consistently. So then we are able to use that as income because it shows that you get that consistently for the past 2 years. Now, this is sometimes common with piece workers or gig workers that work gig by gig and they're waiting for the next gig. And sometimes they have 2 to 3 weeks that they're off and they collect unemployment during those times. So this is very common in those specific areas. Sometimes they do claim unemployment, other times they don't. It is completely up to the individual. But if you've been receiving unemployment consistently for 2 years, we are able to use that as qualifying income. Again, this is very rare, but it is something that we can and has been done. And it's very, very particular to these seasonal workers or contract workers that work gig by gig. This is not for everybody. If you've been on different jobs or if you've been receiving unemployment for a long period of time because you were just literally unemployed and now you're back into, say, a sales job, then this obviously would not apply. So how long do you have to be at a job to qualify for a specific loan program? For example, a conventional loan will require you to work at least 2 years, and you have to be at your current job for at least 6 months. FHA is exactly the same, 2 years in your related field, and you need to be at your job for at least 6 months consistently. For a VA loan, you need 2 years or relevant schooling or military service. And if you are an active duty, you need to be more than 12 months from your release date. For the USDA loan that I've talked about, there is no minimum in your current position. You just need to have 2 years work history. So guys, in this episode, we touched on, do you need 2 years work history to buy a house? So the answer isn't necessarily a yes or a no. It depends on case by case. There are many variables that go into determining if you could buy a house. A lot of the times we can gather all of your income docs and gather your complete loan profile, submit it to our underwriting, and they will give us an approval or not an approval. Sometimes we can get by with 12 months of employment history, 18 months of employment history. It just depends on how strong of a borrower you are. So what that means is if you have a higher credit score, more probability of getting approved for the loan. Same thing if you have assets and reserves, more probability. And then your job, that could be your weakest link, but still help you if you have 6, 12, 18 months, 24 months of employment history. So it is possible. If you have any questions or need us to connect you with a mortgage professional in your area, my contact information will be here below. You can always send me a text, a DM, whatever you prefer. I look forward to connecting with all of you and answering any questions that you guys have. Once again, thank you for listening and have a great rest of your day.